Hi everyone, today we're going to start these tag tutorials and I'm going to start with this one. If you haven't seen my previous video, this is the tag book I made and I want to say thank you for everybody who watches my videos, and some people comment and that's lovely. Joyce Kerrs, who some of you will know, commented that I should keep this book together, not split it up. So Joyce is a wise and wonderful woman, so maybe I'll listen to her. She's also a fabulous artist, and if you don't know her, I'll pop her link under this video. Do go and have a look at her YouTube channel. Her mixed media and journal work is just beautiful. Anyway, we'll start with this fairly straightforward tag. I'm not going to do it exactly the same. I rarely do anything the same twice, but we'll do something similar. I'm going to use the same size tag, which is 3¼ inches by 6½, and this is the template that I use. And I wanted my image to be similar to this, so I wanted an image that was around 5 inches high. And I've picked out two. This is the one I'm going to use. These are cut out of my Flower Fairy book. And this is the one that I'm just going to do a very short, tiny demonstration of. I use small scissors to fussy cut. Quite often when I'm fussy cutting, I leave a little white line around a white border, but in this case I wanted it to be close. And you can see on here, hopefully, that I've cut out a few little bits in between as well. A few bits of the white paper, and I would use a craft knife for this bit. So I would just use the very end of the craft knife, carefully go along that line, slightly curved that little bit, so I would do that as best I can. Going to finish this off with a bit of pen around the edges, so that's that one, just to show you what I did with the holes here. I'll use that on another. So the other way I finish my images off before I would stick them down is to use a brush pen. This one's black. And I would just go round the edges of the image. I could do this with, sometimes I do it with distress ink, but it's quite difficult on an image that's fairly intricately cut like this, so I find the pen is easier. Go from the back so that if I smudge, which I will do, the smudge goes on the back of the image and not the front. 9 times out of 10 anyway. Sometimes it goes a bit wrong. These leaves are barely held on. Probably should have shown you the image before. It was a little more complex. I did cut some of the extra leaves and branches off. It was also taller than 5 inches. And I'll show you in a second. Sorry, this is probably very dull. But I do all of it. And for me, taking the trouble to do some of these smaller tasks pays off in the long run. So this, as I say, this image was taller, and here there were sort of more leaves and things. I just cut those off around those berries, sloe berries. This is the Sloe Fairy, S-L-O-E, I think it is. Okay, so that's that. And then the background paper, I've got some scrapbook paper from AB Studios, which is a Polish company. It's quite thick. It's more like the Tim Holtz lightweight cardstock than paper. and makes a really good background. So I'm going to cut my tag out of this. I liked it on this background, which is the same one as I've got here. But then I turned it over to the other side, and I actually liked it even better on this side. I liked the way the colours toned in. I've already chosen some ribbons and a bit of lace that tone in, so I don't want too much of this pattern on, or particularly this one. So I'm going to cut my tag from here, and I'm going to do it by drawing round it, because I think, sorry, that was probably my big head in the way. I'm not very good at this. I quite often, to be honest, just, you know, hold this up and cut around it. Let's do it with the pencil, and then you'll see. And what I'm going to do is initially work on the face of this cardstock, because I'm going to do some stitching as well. And then I may decide to mount it on another bit of card. And I can't see where I've done that, so let's pop that on there. Cut that off. Okay. That's our background, our basic background, and this is where we're going to pop the fairy. We're going to give her something to stand on. We're going to decorate the back of this a little bit more. It's a little bit plain, so the first thing I'm going to do is a bit of stamping on here. And one of my favourite stamps is a really old one, and it's Italian typewriting, and I can't honestly tell you where I got this from. I do know that the company doesn't exist anymore. I've probably had this 15 years or more, but there are similar ones about. And I'm using VersaFine Smoky Grey. I'm actually going to stamp off the first layer, and I'm just going to do a second impression. So I'm just doing this and a little bit at the top here. I think that'll do. And I want to put something down the side here, but I also want to be able to give our fairy something to stand on. I'm going to decorate the bottom. I've chosen this, well, I initially chose this piece of ribbon, which looked quite nice with it all, but then I found a similar piece which is a little bit more green and this sort of beigey colour and purple, so I'm going to use this on the bottom, and I'm going to put some lace on the bottom. So what I really want now, could stand our fairy directly onto the lace, but I think a little bit of coloured paper would be nice. So I'm just going to see if I've got anything in this little scrap box. And I'm really looking for something a bit purpley, which could be that, maybe that. It's not a huge amount in here. That's my small box that I keep in front of me here. I have got a bigger box of scraps, but looking at this, it looks perfect, really, which is more by luck than judgment. So what I'm going to do, I can see that I've torn a bit off here already. I'm just going to even that up slightly, just so we've got a bit of a curve. And what I'll probably do is put that here for her to stand on, maybe a bit lower. And then we'll drop this off the bottom, maybe even underneath a little bit like that. Depends how long you want your tag, but I think that would look quite good. And then she can stand somewhere down here. I'm going to cut the wings off. Okay, so that's a decision made. The only thing I've got to decide now is what I want down this side. And for me at the moment, we've got enough colour going on now. Sorry, I'm just leaning forward. So I think I might just pop a little bit of dictionary paper down there. This is the bit where, when I'm filming, I think, oh, this is what people really don't want to see. I think this will look all right. I think there's enough variety in everything here for it to look okay. So I'm just going to make that a really thin strip. So let's glue that. And for a lot of this gluing initially, I just use glue stick. And I really only want the edge of this over the edge of my so it's just a hint of something a little bit different. So that's that one, and then this one I'm going to put at the bottom. This is a bit of old vintage map. If you can find an old atlas, the colours in them are really subtle, very pretty for a lot of this sort of collage work. Oh look! See, I love it when things like this is what happens when you do mixed media. I've stuck that on and this line just carries on down this coastline, which looks perfect. It may be that we don't see a lot of that by the end, but it pleases me anyway. So what I want to do now, before I put her on and before I put the ribbon on, is stitch around the edge of this tag, and I'm just going to use a straight stitch all around the edge. So I'm going to go away and do that and then come back and finish this tag off. Okay, so I've stitched around my tag. I've used a purple and green or purple and red variegated thread and just a straight stitch, and I've stuck as you saw, I've stuck this on here. So now I'm going to put her on, and I'm going to do her slightly off centre, and I'm resting her foot not up here because that's making it a little bit high. I'm going to put her about there, and again I'm just going to use the glue stick for that, trying to be careful of these leaves which are quite delicately attached. Okay, so do the rest. It's not the end of the world if they tear. You can nearly always glue them back into place. We'll try and do it in one go. Okay, so the whole of her wings aren't going to fit on, but should be fine. There we go. Cut that excess off. Before I do anything else, I'm going to use distress ink and walnut stain just to go around the edge. what I need to decide is two things. First, exactly where I'm going to place my embellishment at the bottom, which is the sari silk and some lace. I was originally going to use this piece of lace, maybe that way up, but I've been searching through my scrapbooks, which is here, and is gorgeous. A lot of scraps. And I found this, which was a little wider, so I've just cut it down, and what I'm actually going to do is stick this along the bottom and then put this here. I'm going to glue this on with a little bit of Fabri-Tac, which I'll do now. Ideally I would leave this, and I'll tell you why in a minute, but I'll show you how I do it. Because the other decision we need to make, or I need to make, is I want to cover up the white at the bottom, is whether I want this left flimsy like this, or whether I want to glue it down to another piece of card. And I want to do that before I put the ring through the top, the eyelet. So in this case, I am going to, I've cut another piece of card, I am going to attach it, glue it down to this, and for that I'm going to use not Fabri-Tac but a similar, the 3-in-1 glue, and I'm going to do that off camera in a moment because I want to show you how I do the top. This one I'm going to put here. I'm going to do it slightly longer or slightly wider than the tag. Oh, wrong scissors. There we go. And when I stitch this on, I'm just going to do a zigzag underneath here so that the folds stay in place. So what I'll do is go off and do that now. That little bit of stitching, so glued that, probably use a little bit of glue stick on the top just to hold this in place while I stitch it. I'll come back when that's done, and then we'll glue it to the cardboard and finish off the top. Okay, so I've zigzagged this on, glued this bit of lace on. Now I'm going to stick these two bits of card together. As I said, I'll be using, sticking the fabric on first will make it slightly, well, I suppose it could make it slightly awkward sticking these together, but it'll be fine. Try and go right to the edge and over the stitching. When I make my tags, particularly if I'm making them single-sided like these will be, quite often I quite like it if there's not too much stitching on the back, and this is a way to avoid that if you feel the same. So there's not a lot of wiggle time with this glue. So we're going to ink the back as well just to finish off. That's where it's slightly awkward but not too bad. Okay, and then we need to put an eyelet in the top here. Ideally I'd find a bit more of this purple matte and put that at the front, but I've had to search through my scraps and I can't find any. I don't really want to use a whole, I haven't got too many old maps, certainly not of that colour, so this is the bit we had left, and I'm going to put this, I've cut out, punched a punch should imagine that's 1.5 inches, is it? Just 1.25. So I've punched a circle, go around the edges of that. Putting ink on things, putting ink on the edge of things is a really good way of defining them and making it obvious that it's a different pattern, is what I want to say. Oh, I hope this is all right. Let's stick this down with the 3-in-1 as well. I like the acetone based glues because they don't wrinkle the paper, they don't make it so wet. So centralise that. Pop a hole in the middle. And I'm using a bronze eyelet in there. This one has got backing on it. I'm not too good at this, but let's see how we get on with this. Let's go that way up. There we go. Just gently squish that together. I have got a split in that, which I always get. I don't know if there's a way around that, but anyway, it'll be fine, because what I'll do with this one is probably add a bit more of this through the top, because we're making these single-sided, so we'll do that through the top. Or shall I tie it? No, I'll use a bit of twine. Maybe I'll use a bit of purple. Maybe I'll use a bit of purple embroidery thread. I've got the right colour. That one would probably look fine. That one's a bit dark. And that one's a bit too bright. So let's go for this sort of muted lavender. Just wetting it slightly. Sorry, I'm being very revolting. I'm using my tongue. Don't buy this tag. Just going to tie a little bow in this. She says. Okay. Little bow, cut the ends off. And there we are, a variation on our original. Both are really pretty. I might even add a few little gems down here, but not on this video. I think this is quite long enough. So thank you all for watching and see you all again soon. Bye bye.